Hi everybody, we hope you are all keeping well and behaving yourselves and enjoying yourselves at school and getting your brains all turned back on again from all the lockdown. I was just thinking about a wee Sunday school message, and one of the Bible stories that has been really stuck in my head is a miracle that Jesus performed when he fed 5,000 people. And the reason that that has come into my head actually was because I was thinking about the food that the little hall has been handing out over the past few months during lockdown, and hopefully that being a help to some families and to some people who were a little bit stuck. Um, and then I also was thinking about the scheme that the government put out in August called Eat Out to Help Out. And that was a scheme that where they were encouraging people and families to go and eat in restaurants for half the price. So you could stuff your face with loads of food and it would be half the price at the end. Now, I love food and I love a bargain. And if anyone knows Graham Thompson, you'll know that Graham loves a bargain too. But I did with the boys. I made the most of that on a couple of occasions, and it was delicious and great fun. But then I was thinking about this Bible story, and Jesus, in his own way, helped people to be fed, helped people to eat out. And on this occasion, Jesus had been performing a lot of miracles. He had been healing people, and he had been performing miracles that day. And as he had gone up into the mountains, up into the hills with his disciples, he sat down on the grass, and lo and behold, all these followers, people who had been watching him all day, Jesus had got quite famous at this stage, so the people were following him everywhere he went, hoping to be healed or hoping to watch something miraculous. And this day was going to be no different for them. So as Jesus and his disciples sat on the hillside, they watched as multitudes of people continued to follow him, and they followed him up the hill. Jesus could have very easily turned around and said, "Would you clear away off? Go away, leave us alone. We're finished for the day, we're doing no more, or we're tired." But Jesus didn't. Jesus' first response was he addressed the disciples and said, "These people need something to eat. How are we going to feed them?" Jesus knew how he was going to feed them, but he was wanting to see what the disciples would say. And one of the disciples, called Philip, his response, first of all, was, "We don't have food here. We can't feed them." And he says, "We don't even have enough money to go and buy any food. What are we going to do? We can't feed them." And one of the other disciples, Andrew, he actually managed to find, there was a little boy who had a little lunch I'm assuming his mummy had made for him. And he had come to hear Jesus as well. How lovely it was for a little child, a little boy, to come and give up his lunch. And that little lunch consisted of 5 little loaves and 2 little fish. And that little boy, it doesn't say that he argued with Jesus, it didn't say that he refused to give his lunch, but he gave his lunch over. And Jesus knew exactly what he was going to do with this lunch. I'm sure the people around were looking at Jesus going, "Seriously, this isn't going to be enough for anybody." And I'm sure the disciples were wondering what on earth is going to happen now, because we don't have enough to feed these people, and this is not going to sustain anybody. But the Bible tells us that Jesus took the bread and he took the fish and he held it in his hands and he prayed to God to bless the food that was in his hand. And then he instructed his disciples to hand out the food, hand out the bread and the fish. Now, the Bible tells us that there was about 5,000 people in that crowd. Now, I wouldn't want to be providing food for 5,000 people, and certainly not with 5 little loaves and 2 little fish. That wouldn't even feed one. That was made for a little boy, remember? But Jesus blessed that food. And with Jesus and God's miraculous power, they fed those 5,000 people. The baskets were endlessly full until everyone was filled Their bellies were full. They had had enough to eat. And then Jesus said to the disciples, you may go round with baskets and pick up all the scraps. Pick up the stuff that has maybe fallen on the ground, or the bits that are left over. And the Bible tells us that in total there were about 12 baskets full of crumbs and leftovers. Now, how on earth there was crumbs or leftovers from 5 little loaves and 2 little fish, I have no idea. But there was, and the Bible tells us that there was. And these people were full and filled. What a miraculous sight to have beheld the Lord Jesus blessing this food and feeding you with that tiny amount of food, but feeding you till you're full. You know, the Bible does refer to Jesus as the bread of life. He promises that if we believe on him, we will never hunger. And that is in a spiritual hunger. There's something missing in all of our lives. There's a gap in our lives that nothing can fill. No games, no money, no education. There's nothing can fill it. Only Jesus.